Today's guest has run a sub 3-hour marathon, a sub 250 marathon, and a sub 240 marathon. He's not too fast. He's 3 fast, 3 furious. He has 2 YouTube channels, Floberg Runs and Eric Floberg, with a combined subscriber count of over 200,000. He's tall, he's handsome, he's got a wonderful mustache. He's about as affable as Jimmy Fallon or George Clooney. He is a rising star in the running space, verified by his singular name identification. You've heard of Madonna, Beyonce, Kesha. Now I give to you Floberg. How was that? Was that a little bit much?
That was fantastic, man.
No, that's just the first part. I have more. Let's see. Rumor has it he once wrestled a bear. No. Actually, no. He signed with Bear Performance Nutrition. Yeah, no, that makes still impressive, but it makes more sense that way. A man who wears many hats, mostly CLE, but also the dad hat. And that's the reason we're here today. 3 months ago, I interviewed legend of the fall, Eric Floberg. The premise of the interview, for all my fellow dad runners out there, was how he finds the time to do all of the things. So why is this video coming out 3 months later? Well, it's a long, boring story involving deleted files and audio issues, but basically I'm a nanotuber for a reason. But fear not, because I have cleaned up the audio to the best of my abilities and I have recovered the deleted files. Lastly, I just wanted to thank you for your patience, and also a special thanks to Eric for being my test subject. This is the first attempt at something resembling a podcast, so please enjoy. How Floberg finds the time for running.
Yeah, I mean, there's a multitude of ways I've gotten training in throughout the years. When I first started getting into it, I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't balancing as many hats necessarily. I started training for my first marathon in 2017. I had gone full-time with my business in 2016. At that point, I had more free time because prior to that, I was balancing a full-time job as a teacher and building my business. So in that phase, I had 0 time to do anything. Go to school. Oh, wow. A LaCroix on a podcast maybe isn't the best idea. We did Topo Chicos on a podcast episode the other day. It was brutal. But yeah, I mean, I would do a full week of school, and then I would be editing wedding films and like all sorts of other creative projects every evening, and I'd be shooting on the weekends. It was just impossible. And so I think once I had the bandwidth to have just one job, at that point I was like, oh, I've always wanted to run. Honestly, I didn't have Strava back then. I didn't have anything. I had really no way of recording my runs. I think I was on the Nike Run Club app. I looked at my old account. I couldn't find all of it. So I honestly have no idea when I fit it in back then. I also wasn't training as hard as you really should be if you're like trying to get after times. So
yeah, well, how do you work it in these days now that you are training and doing relatively high mileage?
Yeah, so back then it was just so pieced together whenever, and I realized once I was like training legitimately and needed to have structure, with the structure needed to be structure in my schedule in some capacity. And so in 2019, I partnered up with a friend who coached me and did long runs on the weekends with my wife, like sacrificing her time. That didn't work. So now it's like wake up at 4, 5 most days to get at least the 10, 11 mile runs in. And I don't know, I feel like I have an unfair advantage now because running is becoming half of my job and filming it. So I mentioned in one of my latest videos that Wednesdays are now going to really be, my workouts are really going to be aiming at like the 2 p.m. window before the workday closes. So we can film the workout, we can go do it with sunlight, and then I could head home after that. I mean, most days now I'm waking up at 4:30, really 5 at the latest, to just get it in before the kids are like really up. My wife might have like 30 minutes with them alone.
So I remember when my youngest, like I started to chart how many times he got sick at the age of 3. It was like once every 6 weeks. I'm back. All right, sweet. I think I maybe unplugged this. I'm not sure. Need your expert.
Bro, I'm not a Riverside expert.
Yeah, no, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. This will be a prop. So, can you still hear me?
I can. Yep.
All right, sweet. We'll switch to that. So yeah, no, I was saying that I remember when my youngest was like 3 years old, he was getting sick like every 6 weeks at least with like a fever or whatever. And then like right now, I've got like 10 days to the Woodlands Marathon. I'm like washing my hands every 6 minutes. Have you? How do you juggle that, or have you run into any landmines with illness in the house?
Yeah, well, we're going through it right now. My wife and the baby had strep a few weeks ago, and I typically get sick alongside all of them. And for years, I had a horrible immune system. I just caught like everything. So training through that was pretty brutal. There were weeks where I would just slog it out and do it, and sometimes it's just like it's just not worth it. So I really rolled with the punches there. Not trying to do any kind of ad read or sponsorship for VPN right now, but I feel like it was really the catalyst for me to like actually start being intentional with nutrition and with supplements. And I've really been dialing in all like the strong joints and fish oil supplement and strong reds and greens every single morning. Just because I'm like, well, if they're gonna send them to me, I'm gonna use them and see if they make a difference. This is the first winter I had one cold and that's it. And I've just been shocked at that. And I'm sure it has to do with training as well and a boost of immunity with being really consistent. I haven't missed a single day in this block so far. Along with that, like, you turn over one stone and all of a sudden all the stones start to turn over. You're like, oh, well, that's going to motivate me to eat healthy most of the time as well. Eat clean, get protein in, recover well, do recovery drinks after each run. And so I'm fully convinced at this point, especially doing a carb drink mix in the middle of the run. I think that's really been changing things for me because I know when I'm not recovered well, I'm so much more prone to sickness. And that's a really positive side for sponsorship for me is that it really kind of holds me accountable to do the thing as well, which I think I don't really know if many people are talking about it that way. It's almost just like, yeah, it's a double bonus for me. It's just like we're going to supplement you financially and the work that you're doing on YouTube, but also it's like actually improving everything I do because it's like forcing me to do the right things. And I'm like, I'm not going to just
Mm-hmm.
chill VPN all the time. Like obviously there are plenty of different ways you can get those kinds of things.
That's true, and but I think also too, like it's a little bit challenging as a dad. I don't know, like how many birthdays, Easter's, Halloween, like there's always dad tax in this house in effect,
Yes.
and so like I take in my youngest, he wants a donut. I'm not going to tell him no, and of course,
Yeah.
I'm going to have one too. So, and
Right.
I struggle in that department too. I dodged a landmine last time, like right after the Houston marathon. Well, I drove 3 hours from San Antonio to Houston. We go there, just finish the race, meet up with my wife, go back to the Airbnb, take a shower, like, gotta drive back. I'm like, find the nearest Whataburger. I need a number five, no onions. And my ride or die, let's find a Walmart parking lot. Let's scarf this thing down. Let's go, drive back, pick up all the kids from all the aunts, all the friends, grandparents. And then, like, that night, the youngest comes down with strep. So it's like, whew, just missed it.
Yeah.
And he was all right, but it gave me time to like also, when I took him to the doctor and then he passed out, like reflect because it was a busy day at work or a busy like whole week, and it was like nobody cares that you run a marathon, like literally nobody cares. But speaking of that, so for your family, I've seen your videos, so I already know the answer. But like, do they come with you in every marathon? Do they come with you on some of the marathons?
Every Chicago, our oldest two go down with my wife, and then we usually have the little ones watched by her parents, because my parents will usually come to the race as well. Yeah, because all four of them along the course and dragging them, especially the little ones, is not easy. My wife did that by herself at Grandma's Marathon in 22. So, I mean, absolute legend for doing that. We all slept in the same hotel room with two queen beds. And yeah, I mean, that was a peak race for me. So I was just kind of like freaking out, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what if we're up all night? And I'm like, this is just the reality of it. So
Do you do two bedrooms now?
I know I haven't traveled for a race, so I don't. So Boston, we're still trying to figure out if the boys are gonna come, the two oldest, or if it's just gonna be my wife and then probably her parents again watching, because I think my parents are going to come out for that race. They haven't come out to any non-Chicago race. I don't really know if I think my mom pays close enough attention to like my running channel now, so, and I talk to her about it once in a while. She's a YouTuber as well, and she's been doing craft YouTube, and she's up to like 5,000 subs. I'm really proud of her. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to be in that world with them if they decide to come. It's a double-edged sword. Like I want them to grow up seeing me do that, but I really like the age that the boys are at right now to see that. Like especially this last Chicago. I mean, like just horribly sad story now with Kiptum, but like they were starstruck when he ran by because they knew who he was, and they like couldn't stop talking about it, and so it became, if I feel like those are starting to become core memories. Whereas like if you're, I don't know, if you're 5 or younger, it's kind of like, I don't want to be here. Like let's get a donut, you know?
Oh yeah, the first 4 or 5 years is feel like it's all for the parents. Like the first birthday party, you're like, yeah, they're not gonna remember, you know. It's just all for the parents.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, we did last year we did the Woodlands, and that was one where we actually took the kids and traveled, and we found ourselves in one, you know, like 2 queens, and I was like, all right. And I somehow still fell asleep all right, you know, like, so it wasn't as big of an issue, but we're gonna, I guess, do that again in 10 days. So
Yeah, you gotta just go for it. I mean,
it makes
really
it spicy.
really care about the night before, 2 nights prior to the race, because I feel like, yeah, race night sleep, you're like, "Man, whatever, you'll be fine."
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Yeah,
before
and
you
then,
ask me the next question,
yeah.
Houston Marathon for you.
Yes.
I want to hear more of your thoughts.
On
You ended up,
Houston,
you did what, 303, 304?
302.24. Yeah. So, I mean, it was, the way I look at it is like, you know, they say you got about 10 years of, you know, getting fitter aerobically or whatever. And it makes sense. Like, it's the human body. If you look at like gym bros or like lifters, it's going to take them 10 years to put on that muscle. It's going to take them a while to do it, you know, and they got that old man strength. You see the guy with the spaghetti straps, and he's all like bronzed and he's old and he's just sitting there just crushing, you know, and I get passed in marathons by old guys that are just like, you know, and I've been running for 4 years, so I feel like I got that like fresh out of high school body where like I'm like, oh yeah, aerobically I think I'm all like fit. Like I could go, man, but I fade. I haven't put in the miles, you know, over enough lifetime miles, I feel like. And I want to ask you about your sub 3 journey, the 250 and 240. We're gonna play a game, and the only 3 answers are sub 3, sub 250, and sub 240, because I really kind of want to know where they land for you, like personally, like the day, the race, the training block, like which one was better and which one was this, because up until that point, like I was thinking, oh yeah, you know, PR is great, but it's like, yeah, and I did PR and I didn't hit my goal, but like say I go out in 10 days and I run a sub 3, Houston might have been a better day.
Yeah.
You know, it felt better.
Yeah.
You know,
I hear that.
But yeah, no, thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course. Loved your video. It was really fun. Kofuzi following you the last like 400 meters, and you were like,
"You're so strong. You are so strong. You've been training for this. Let's go. Hold it together."
I know that feeling of someone you know who's like cheering you on. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah, it was great. Like, and I was surprised too, because it was just like, you know, I have this small channel, right? And then I go out and I've done like local races, right? But I haven't been to any big races where anyone of the subscriber base is there. And so like, I wasn't expecting anyone to really be like, oh, hey, what's up, Midlife Runner, you know? And it was kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, you watch the channel? Like, I know in theory people do.
Right.
But then it's like meeting people, and then like,
it's crazy.
Now everyone's calling me Midlife Wanker, and I love it. It's the best. So I guess we can transition sort of to the other side of things on film. You have 2 YouTube channels. The other one, Eric Floberg. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is about? What is your other life?
Yeah. It's weird to be in the running world now, talking about what I've been building for the past, 7-8 years. I started that channel in 2018. Like really started putting intention into it, with posting regularly, either weekly or bi-weekly. And that was in the photo and filmmaking realm. And so it was kind of riding the wave of Peter McKinnon and all the Canadian photo and filmmaking YouTubers. So like if you're familiar, Maddie Hapoya and Chris Howe and Lizzie Pierce and just like that, Jesse Driftwood. They're like all within 15 miles of each other up by Toronto. And then I had some friends with a channel called Mango Street. Was super influenced by them, had been going on trips with them. They really encouraged me to start making stuff. And so at that point, I was a full-time wedding photographer and wedding filmmaker. And I had a background in formal education. I was a middle school teacher. So I was like, okay, well, let's take both the skills and bring it to YouTube and see, because my whole childhood and teenage years into college, I was constantly making videos to entertain people. And even in the classroom, I would make videos for presentations for the kids, and they always loved them. I even did like a rap about amphibians for 7th graders, which I think is private on that channel now. But that like blew away our principal. He was just like, no one does this. And I'm like, it's really not that hard, but okay. So I just took those skills, I put them together, and I started doing tutorials on how to take certain photographs, how to do creative double exposures, how to edit wedding films, just all these tutorials, all these creative projects. And YouTube really liked that, pushed the content a lot. It was getting featured on blogs a whole lot. And so I really just kind of built my career as this wedding portrait, short film, narrative, creative. In that, like, developed digital products, built my own course on how to shoot weddings. That started back in 2021, and like the success of that really kind of funded my new evolution. I've talked at great length on my main channel of how I diversify my income as a creative entrepreneur, how I have my hand in a lot of pots and a bunch of streams of income to support what I do. So like I really break down my finances a whole lot on that channel as well. But a lot of that it's called The Classroom, my wedding workshop or online course, if you will. It funded us doing a feature-length documentary the past 2 years, and really gave me the push to feel confident to do a running YouTube channel, because I realized I was not feeling super inspired by the photo filmmaking YouTube world much anymore. I wasn't watching that anymore. I only watched like a couple people's channels, and I was constantly watching running stuff, like obsessively watching Kofuzi and Seth James Damore and Ben Parks just all the time. And so I'm like, well, if I have all the filmmaking skills and I'm really getting into running, I should probably just do it. I know YouTube really well, so let's just go for it.
Yeah, like when I got into YouTube, the first video I posted was like after the Chicago Marathon, and I got some video footage of my phone, and my wife had phone, and we kind of put it together, and I was like, all right. And because of Kofuzi, I took the plunge. I found like I gotta go pro, and like I dove into it, and so then the algorithm started throwing me like how to YouTube channels, and they're like, what do you do? Your niche, but what, right? And so you would be like running, but extremely talented filmmaker, right? But I do want to touch on this a little bit too, because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about how you balance the family life and everything is on that channel you did a narrative short, My Father's Son. And I'm going to drop it in the description below and pin it in the comments so everyone can check it out. So I wanted to ask you, like, what was the motivating force behind that?
Yeah, there's a good bit of reality woven into that film. Last year and the year before, start to test reality versus what's a fictional story and how it could be woven into my personal life experiences, into some sort of fictional narrative. And so what I think what I equate that film to be is it is more of a magnification of my life, more of an exaggeration, where I've dealt with all of the themes in there, but maybe not to the level of ignoring that this father was doing to his son. Yeah, so the lines are really blended. It's like, in making that film, I found a greater, deeper appreciation for my own father, and it really motivated me to like step into that more and to be even more present.
Yeah, no, I found it to be really touching and relatable, in a way, as a runner and as a dad.
But I mean, I'm super excited to make short films on the running channel eventually. It'll definitely happen. I have a new employee, Cyrus. He just moved up here a few weeks ago from Florida, and he's like unbelievably skilled and talented for a 20-year-old. And it's just like all of this creative energy coming into the studio, and producing the weekly episodes is becoming like more succinct and even more beautiful and just easy. And so we're starting to dream up all these ideas of what we could do in the running space. And I think there's a whole new beast to explore in making really impactful films that have running themes. That'll happen after a peak race, maybe over the summer or something.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I spent my 10,000 hours writing when I was a teenager, which is always writing stories and screenplays. And then I went to the University of Texas, and I lived in LA, and I did all this like film stuff, and which is ironic because I ended up being dragged in front of the camera.
You got something in your teeth. Power is right compels you. Obey your thirst, demon.
And then people refer to us as the talent, but we really know you're actually talented. So, but this becomes really apparent when anyone watches like the first 5 seconds of anything that you produce on either one of your channels, which is why I think, as part of the success. So I'm curious, like on a movie front, like when you watch movies, do you get wrapped up in the story and in the plot, or are you more looking at the composition and a lot of the movement of the shots and the lighting?
I only recently, I'd say in the past 2 to 3 years, have really been watching films with intentionality. I was always a really superficial viewer prior to that. Not much depth in what I cared to dissect in any kind of film I watched or any TV show. And since I've really started to indulge in the mediums as an artist, I've started to really take note of, I think it's really easy to get to this, what I call the superficial side of it, is how beautiful it can be and how well it was shot, composition, lighting. You become an armchair director of photography, but in having more conversations and relationships with people who are wildly successful in that field, which I wouldn't consider myself that. Like I'm not a DP, I'm not a director, I'm not a formal any of those things. But one person in particular by the name of Ryan Booth we came across through our documentary. Ryan is just like so well connected, so well accredited. He directed one of the main commercials leading to the NBA finals last year. In having conversations with him specifically, he's something I really think about often. He only cares about emotion and story, and almost exclusively. And he cares so much about writing, and he's spent so long building his first feature film that's hopefully going to go into production soon. I've really come to realize that like without that substance, there really isn't anything special. It's just a bunch of cotton candy. I personally care more about the substance, and so it feels like I've really come around to that a whole lot more the past few years in watching stuff. I don't really watch all that much. That's the thing.
Really?
I don't feel motivated to what I don't have a great attention span. I have really bad comprehension. I get lost in a complex film, and I get to the end, I'm like, I have to have someone explain it to me. But ones that I do latch onto, those are almost the ones where I'm like, that was a really good film because it held my attention. I was able to follow it. Some of them can get so antiquated and just cerebral, and you're like, I get lost in the sauce, and I'm like, how is this good to a wide audience if only a minority can really enjoy it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a really long answer. Sorry.
No, you're all good. So my kids are like really thirsty for movies, and I was like, my inner film snob comes out. And I'm like, oh, that's got like I don't pull out my Criterion collection or anything. I don't have a Criterion collection, but it's great to get their perspective on it too, because I would be like, we want something scary, and I'm like, well, I can't show you something too scary. And then I'm like, maybe Tremors, because it was on Netflix and it was there, and I explained the plot, and my fifth grader was like land jaws, and I was like, yeah, land jaws, yeah, no, you nailed it, man. We don't need to watch that one, dude. Like, yeah, that's good. I don't have time for movies much, or there's usually like one show that I'll watch, like, oh hey, True Detective, and we'll watch like one episode every 2 weeks. Yeah, or try to carve out time for it. But all right, at some point we have to talk about running, I guess, right? So yeah, and by the way, I don't know how long this is going to take. I just wrote a bunch of questions down. So
yeah, man, there's no pressure. I'm not on a time limit, really. No. I can't be up till midnight. I definitely still have to run at 4 a.m. So.
breaking three after all. It's just the other way. The rich Go rich roll on your ass. So, speaking of breaking three, we'll start from there on the running. I am myself on a breaking three journey. It is quite popular over the last few years, probably since Kofuzi went on a breaking three journey.
Yeah.
I swear I heard in one of your videos you said it took you 6 years to break sub 3, and I thought, no, wait, that can't be right. Let me rewind that. Certainly it didn't take, I'm high on life because that guy did not, like, he's always been fast in my head. Did it really take you 6 years?
It was 5. First marathon was 2017. The goal was always to go under 3. Immediately I heard of Boston qualification. I was like, oh, I want that, because I just had this arrogant mentality going into running. Because in middle school, I like won district and won cross country district, and 8th grade I ran a 5:23 mile, but I just didn't want to pursue it anymore. I didn't like the pressure. I wanted to play football. So I never ran in high school, ran a few just here and there in college. So when it came time to, once I was full-time in my business and had more loose time to do something like that, I was like, well, marathon's always been a bucket list item. And just for years, for 2 years, just had no idea what I was doing and was just throwing paint at the wall. And was like, I don't know, I think I'm naturally talented at running. I'll try. And so just, I mean, my half split in those races were good. Like my first half split was 1:35 in 2017, but then I ended with a 3:49 that year. So
Wow.
it was a lot of walking in the second half. Next year, booked a wedding day before the race. Completely forgot that the race was happening. Booked the wedding. Was like, dang it. So I was on my feet 10 hours the day before, exhausted. Ran that one. Did that one a lot easier. Approached a lot easier. Went 1:45 through the half and then finished 3:59. And that just felt really embarrassing. And I was like, you're better than this. You can figure out how to train and how to do this. Because seeing a half split like that, like a 1:35, 1:45, I'm like, I should be able to at least run like under 3:30, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had that friend in 2019 start to coach me who like had an idea. He was like, I think I know the math method and like that you have to do interval training and we'll figure it out. So that year I hit 3:10. So it was like much more volume, much more structure. So it was 2017, 18, 19. Ran a virtual one in 2020, ran 3:05 along the lakefront, cramped up at 21. And then 2021 developed posterior tibial tendonitis and just didn't want to go to PT, was a typical guy and was like, I don't need a doctor. And yeah, just didn't train a whole lot of the year, ran 3:11 in New York. And then finally 22 is when I like really took it seriously. So I ran 3:03 at Grandma's and then finally broke 3 in Chicago.
So what do you think was was there any secret sauce? Was there anything that you did in particular that helped get you over the hump?
Really train with gels and like take gels seriously. Because even Grandma's, I was like eating honey stinger chews, and I even brought like liquid IV packets on the course and was like dumping them into water cups. I like still had zero idea what I was doing, and it's weird because that was like a year and a half ago. What, 2 years? Like almost 2 years ago. And so I really committed to that summer. It's like, no, let's figure out every single part of this. Someone who watched my main channel reached out. Was like, hey, let me just coach you. I ran a 2:21. I know what I'm doing. His name's Brandon. He came in to rescue me. And he really kind of deconstructed a lot of my thinking, because I think up until then I was just like a whole lot of low heart rate training is great. Let's build volume that way. And just very little intensity. And he was looking at all that through my Strava, and he's like, you just need so much more intensity. Like, you need workouts. You need structured long runs. So we'll do that. And I'm like, yeah, let's build to 85 miles a week. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to get you under 3, like with 50 to 60 miles a week. I'm going to put you on LT sessions. I'm going to do VO2 max workouts, structure your long runs. And then sure enough, like, he gave me a schedule every week, followed all the hard workouts. They were super hard, but got way more fit, was incorporating gels correctly, got on Spring Energy at that point. That worked for me. I was like, a natural gel, it's not going to make me puke. Yeah, just like magic happened. I think I was in like 252 shape that day, but I like took it easy to make sure I got under.
You gotta get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. You might be the first person to ever answer that question without saying consistency, so I appreciate you on that one. Which is probably true, but everybody's like, oh,
I
yeah,
don't
be
think enough
consistent.
people talk about
Yeah,
intensity.
yeah,
That's the thing. Like,
yeah.
your
Hmm.
workouts are so important.
Hmm.
Like, at the end of the day, that's just the reality. Obviously, you need volume. Obviously, you need consistency. Obviously, you need lifetime miles. Maybe not obviously. Maybe you're just listening to this and hearing that for the first time. You need all those things. Yes. Do all those things. You need to be nailing your workouts. I mean, like, you need to be fueled up. You need to be hydrated. You need to be rested and ready to attack it to your full potential so that you get the adaptation after the workout with all of the hardest work you can put into making yourself faster. Once you can unlock that and like switch that gear and teach your body what that new gear is, and then come off of it and adapt, recover, boom, get to your long run that weekend, and just keep that cycle going for 12 weeks, you will be so fit by the end of that block. And like just take them so seriously and nail your splits. That's been so monumental for me.
That's awesome. So you ran sub 3, then you went on and then you ran sub 250, and then you did 240. So now I want to play the game. The answer is going to be sub 3, sub 250, or sub 240. Which of those races felt hardest during the race?
Hardest during the race was 240 for sure. 250 next. 3 was the easiest. Sub 3 was the easiest.
Okay.
Yeah, 240 because by 15, 16, I was getting groin cramps, which I've never experienced ever. And I was like, whoa, well, this is a problem. For 10 more miles, I have to deal with this. And literally to the point where like there were some times where I would take like a short step and like jerk my body because like the groin would seize. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm screwed. Like I don't. And so it was just a matter of like, I'm just gonna keep going, keep trying to keep the pace, but don't go too hard because I can just completely blow up. Because the goal was 242, under 242. And the all those miles, I was just like, I'm barely gonna have a shot at it. And I came to about 2-3 miles left, and I was like, I can actually go under 240. Let's just because there's something about that last couple miles where you're like, there's no more risk really. Let's just send it.
Yeah.
I don't care how tired you are. So yeah, it was wild.
Which one had the most challenging training block?
Hmm. Also 240 for sure. Yeah, just with an intensity at those paces because I ran more mileage in the spring block for 250, but the paces, like the intensity of the paces in the workouts and long runs for the 240 block, I feel like every other week I was not nailing splits. And I was like, this is not going to end well. So, yeah.
Yeah, were you working with that? Were you still working with Brandon, or
Mm-mm.
were you using the Fitzinger plan?
Yeah, Brandon was only Chicago 22, so I went solo for 250 and solo for 240 as well. But Brandon just like was my shepherd. He just like taught me like this is what's most important. And so I really adapted my philosophy and my philosophical approach to training and was like, well, I'm going to apply everything he said and I'll do a huge high mileage block, which is what I did in the spring. Got me crazy fit. And then I was like, okay, this fall block, I don't need to go as crazy on the mileage, but I'm going to keep the intensity. It's almost like just waves. Like, and now I'm in another high mileage block again with intensity being great, but it's almost like my spring blocks are high mileage with intensity, and then the fall blocks are like don't need to go so much on the volume, but like really nail the workouts more.
Which one of the races felt the most rewarding?
Sub 3 for sure. I mean, all of them had a crazy reward in the end with the times that they were and the accomplishment that it was. But yeah, I mean, you can't beat the 5 years of not getting it to then all of a sudden it just did not feel real. That was the craziest part. Like, and I was connected enough at that point with creatives around the finish line that there were like multiple photographer friends calling my name and taking my photo, and I was just like, it just felt so surreal. I'm like, how is this happening? I've been dreaming out this for half a decade, so that was really special.
Which one had the biggest celebration? Do you take time to celebrate them, or do you just move on? Like maybe like, oh, sub 3, what's next? 4 seconds later, sub 250.
Yeah.
You know.
hmm I think sub 3 was the biggest celebration. I think that was the loudest I was. I was just off my rocker, and I had the most energy because, like I said, I think I was in 252 shape, but really played it safe to make sure I got the job done. So like I was just so animated. But a close second was 240 with celebrating with my friend Sam. He came in about a minute before me, so he was waiting for me to cross. And I dipped under 240 by like 30 seconds. And so we were just hooting and hollering as well. And it was a completely different experience in that I didn't really have much of a channel at all in 22. And then in 23, it was, I don't know, at that point, 25,000 subs or something. So that whole experience, I don't know if that's another question you have, that whole experience in the race was entirely different because Chicago, this past fall was like somebody yelling my name every mile. And so it was like so overwhelming where I'm like, this is not real in that capacity. It was just so much support on the course, and that fueled me a whole lot in the race. So
Yeah, does everybody hit you with Floberg? Like nobody hits you with the "Hey
yeah,
Eric." Does it? No one gives you the
I feel
Eric,
like
right? Except for mom and
yeah,
dad.
it's like 95% Floberg, but I feel like whenever anybody says Eric, it's almost them being like, I know you're an artist. like like I know what you do outside of running.
Okay, so like 250 has to win something, so we're gonna say it's the best marathon video recap. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
yeah.
The footage of it, I don't know. I just like that one got me hyped.
hmm
So I don't know. I don't know.
It's this weird, it is
Go
a
ahead.
weird middle child syndrome kind of race, right? Because it wasn't a major marathon. It wasn't Chicago. It was Carmel Marathon in Indiana. So it was much lower key, much less crowd support, much less hype. But in its own regard, that one, I think that was a close second in doubt because by mile 8 in that one, I was like, this is not possible. But the story of that day was so cool because Ethan, the guy that I clung on to at like mile 3, mile 4, he turned his shoulder and looked at me. He's like, "Hey, Floberg," and I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he's just like, "Oh man, been watching the series. I'm trying to go for 250 today also." I was like, "Great, let's just team up." And he's like, "That sounds awesome." I'm like, "Great." And it wasn't any kind of like fanboy energy or anything like that. He was just like a really solid dude and just really kind. And we just hung together like 80% of the race. And when things started to get hard by 13, 14, he was just like, you have this. Like, come on, let's go. You got this. Let's keep doing it. And he kept being like, "How do you feel? How do you feel?" I'm like, "I don't feel good." He's like, "Come on, you trained. Let's go." So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to him for that race. And then he stepped on the gas at like 20, and then I had to fend for myself. But that was close enough to the finish line that I was able to kind of take it in solo. But that also felt so surreal, and that one was a pivotal moment in just being like, okay, you have much more that you're capable of than just a sub 3 marathon now, because you just dropped 9 minutes off of the fall race. And so once I started talking to more people in the running world, they're like, oh, if your PR is gapping that much, you have a lot of untapped potential. And so that's where it really, shortly after that race, I was like, all right, 242 in Chicago, let's go for it.
So now we can transition to your current journey, sub 235. Not as sexy as a sub 230, but a step up from 242. So we'll go for that
Yeah.
one. So how do you feel that the training has been going thus far?
It's been great. Working with Jeff Cunningham is a treat. It is fascinating to see his approach because it's so different to fits and advanced marathoning in the workout structure and in the easy run stuff. Like he just functions very differently. So fits, it's a lot of 5 to 6 reps of intensity in VO2 max, and lactate threshold similar. But like my workout today with him was lactate threshold and 800-meter repeats. It was just like, whoa, and it was like the first Jeff Wednesday workout, which I've seen them, like I know how he trains people. I'm like, I did a 14-mile workout today, which was wild. Like, I got to the end of it, I'm like, my legs don't work. Like, this is nuts. So I'm honestly so excited to embark on more of those Wednesdays. You know, at this point, I only have like 7 left. The volume so far as well has made me feel like really confident, because every easy day I'm running 10, 11 miles, and it's just 11 easy, just beating the same drum. But it's giving me a whole ton of confidence.
How frequently do you connect or talk with Coach Jeff?
Well, he coaches so many people that, and I know I'd be in the same exact position as him, and I've looked at it this way. It's like, if I ever want anything from him, it's going to be on me to reach out to him, because I don't expect him to be sitting on his phone at every hour of the day, just being like, oh, this person got there. Oh, this, like, or if he has notifications on, like, just dinging all day, like, workout's done, go check on the, you know. And so if I feel like I need to talk to him for some reason, I'll reach out to him. And he's really, and honestly, been really good about getting back. And even like, it's not even more of technical stuff, because I feel like at this point I know what we're doing here. It's just more of like, hey, it's like a dad moment. Dad, look what I did. Like, today, he's so funny too. Like, he is the person he is online, which is so fun, because
which is a second cousin to Matthew McConaughey, right? I mean,
yes.
they sound the same.
Yes, it's so funny. I think today I sent him like the salute emoji and was just like, "Sheesh," like I'm dead, and he just goes, "That one jerky to Jesus." Yeah, it did. But like, the first call I had with him, that was the biggest thing. He's like, my workouts are so different than what you've been doing. Like, you need to expect you're going to run 14 to 16 miles in the middle of the week with intensity. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's really hard in the moment, but I know that when I get to the end of the block, I'm going to have so much confidence knowing that I tackled these Wednesdays.
Yeah, and his energy is so infectious. I may have seen the sub 3 hour formula with Nick Bear podcast probably 35 times.
Same.
You know, like, wait, what was that? Hold on. I was there, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and which is really funny too, is also he's like so excited, and you see him like running around the course, yelling at everybody, but everything he's yelling is like, slow down, you know. And so,
right.
You can take it easy, take it easy. You would think a coach would say the opposite, you know.
Right.
Oh man, have you seen the movie Whiplash?
Yes.
Yeah, so the only thing I was thinking, like, now that I'm a runner, right, I was watching that with my middle child. We were watching it, and J.K. Simmons, he was sitting there, you know, he's like doing his stuff. I was like, maybe the only coach that I would want besides Jeff Cunningham was that guy just, you know, hitting 400s. Not my tempo. Not my tempo. She's like throwing shit at me, you know. I need some of that kind of motivation. But yeah, he sounds great. He sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
This was also bring us to BPN. So you made an announcement a few months ago, that you signed with BPN, which is really cool. I wanted to know, what did that look like? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How'd that all go down?
Yeah, they reached out to me. The way I tend to build things entrepreneurially is I don't try to really pitch anyone. I just kind of let the work speak for itself. When the stars align, they align well, usually in that circumstance, because there were a lot of just really strange offers I got that I just completely ignored in building the running channel. I'd also been around the block a whole bunch with my other channel for years, so I knew how sponsorships work. I knew how they work traditionally on YouTube. They tend to be incredibly transactional, and I am such an intentional person that I hate that so much. I can't stand YouTube contracts that are like, all right, you're going to say this ad read for 30 to 60 seconds. Here's the copy, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get paid X much, and it needs to be done by this date and approved 3 times, and all this red tape, and you're like, no, thank you. Like, I'm an artist at the end of the day, like, truly just a filmmaker, and I can't function under these rules. I started my own business and company to not play by the rules, so I'm not going to play by yours. And so what I love doing is I love making and creating what I do to develop my own voice and let other people witness it and watch it and see it be successful. And then any kind of brands that want to be a part of it, like, I don't need to name any names outside of BPN, but like, I've been approached by different brands that are like, okay, we want to work with you, let's do it this way. I'm like, no, we're not going to do it that way. This is my channel. So BPN reached out to me through an email, and they're like, we'd love to chat. Hope reached out to me on the team, sweetest. And she got on a call and straight up was just like, we love everything you do. We've been watching you for a while now. We want you to be an athlete. And just straight up was like, you do you. We want to pay you to be a part of this, and we want you to use the product. So that was after I, tested it for a few months. I was at the booth in Chicago. A-Rod on the team, he's a graphic designer. He sent me home with a goodie bag, and I tried G1M for the first time, the Go Gels, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I love the product. I truly do. And it felt like the revelation I had with Spring Energy and that stuff, it very much felt that way with this. And so when they approached me and they're like, we don't want to step on your creativity at all. We really kind of have no rules. Just do you. And I'm like, sounds great. Let's do this
perfect.
And of course there's incentives and commissions I can make by my code and whatnot, but it's not something I'm regularly just constantly plugging all the time. If people want to use that, it sits in the description. I bring it up naturally in videos. I'm going to let people put two and two together and,
Yeah. I think there's enough authenticity to your channel that kind of carries weight. And the same thing with my channel. No one sends me shoes for some reason. And so, I did a plug. I do a lot of parodies, and parody, you don't really know how it's going to get taken because people don't know it's a parody if they don't know the channel. So if they see something that's what they don't tell you about not telling you things or whatever, you don't know if it's a joke or not.
Right.
And I did this ad for my coach as a joke. And so instead of where you would normally see AG1 greens or whatever it's called, right? Yeah. Instead, it was hey, here's a coach. And then I look back at the analytics from the YouTube. And it's people skip that part the second it comes on. And it's just it was a joke. It's not a real thing, And so it's I don't want anything that sort of drives people away.
Right.
All right, sweet. So people will say at the end of these interviews, I want to be respectful of your time. Well, I'll be transparent. I want to be completely disrespectful of your time.
I love it.
No, just a couple more questions. Now that you're with BPN, obviously they've got the supplements, but overall, you mentioned earlier you're focusing more on nutrition. Have you been getting into some of the strength work? Did I see you on a squat rack on Instagram? Was that legit?
You did, yeah. Well, what's funny is my new internet friend, Pete Stables, who is a strength coach for endurance athletes, has just very similarly to Brandon, just hey, let me just help you out. He said, I've gotten so much out of your channel, so much inspiration, creative inspiration, all this stuff. I'd love to just help you figure out the gym for yourself. And it was another one of those yeah, you're right, I had no idea what I was doing. And he's you don't need that kind of intensity right now. I'm going to give you a lot of single leg work. I'm going to give you barbell thrusts. I'm going to give you these obscure things that are going to actually benefit you. You don't have the foundation to be building on deadlifts and squats and these things. We could talk about that later, but what's going to help you most right now through Boston is 2 days a week with these very specific, very targeted workouts. A lot of bodyweight stuff, a lot of kettlebell stuff. And then once we get to 3 weeks out, you just go down to 1 day a week. He's this is not rocket science. Let's just get you to the start line healthy and safe. So that's been really eye-opening for me, and honestly a ton of pressure relieved, because I was okay, I really want to be hitting squat and deadlift and all this stuff. And I'm not saying I don't want to do that in the future. I do want to functionally become stronger, and I actually do like those lifts. I did them quite a bit in high school football and wrestling and stuff. And so I'm very open to building some of that foundation in the summer so that I can be lifting a bit heavier in the fall or some of those other functional lifts through a training block and not injure myself or not really get the adaptation I need because my body's so fatigued from running. So that's really what he's kind of pounded in my head. And it's been so gracious and kind and, another shepherding kind of moment. Just hey, little child, listen, this is what you actually need.
That's awesome. Do you feel like the strength work that you've done has helped fortify the body, the groin, and stuff that's been bothering you before in previous blocks?
Yeah, I mean, I've not been consistent with it yet. Really only done 1 set a week through the first few weeks. And so in these middle weeks, I want to be getting 2 sets in for each week. But I'm horrible at doing peripheral things like Epsom salt baths and getting on the balance disc for my tendonitis in my ankle. And because I get to the middle of the week and I'm just like, I feel fine. So I know that it's just waiting for me, like one of these blocks, or if I'm not prehabbing and then like I'm at an 8 or 9 on the pain scale on one of these. So it's not that I'm not doing it. I'm just like, it's very much the stereotypical. If you saw Herm Runs did a reel not too long ago where it was just like the pre-workout stretch, like the reality versus like what you think you're doing. And it was literally just like a trunk twist and a fart, and then he ran.
Yeah. Getting right to it.
Yeah, I'm so stereotypical in that way. And so a lot of people think I'm like super dialed in on everything. I'm like, I'm really dialed in on a few specific things, and then other things I'm supposed to be dialed in on, I'm very, very much not. And part of me kind of likes that. I'm like, let's see what I could do without doing all these things like super intensely on the periphery, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it's really cool. There was one video, it might have been the Sub 250 journey, where you'd missed workouts.
Yeah.
And you didn't hit all your mileage that you were going to hit, and you still hit your goal. And it's really worth noting, because like sometimes the narratives that you can tell myself is like, got to run all these miles, I've got to do all this stuff, and like I've got to just say yes policy to like food in general.
Yeah.
And so like I just eat, like my nutrition is probably not fantastic, and then like I'll slack on the gym a little bit until like halfway through my long run I'm like, my Achilles is flared up. So then afterwards I'll go to the gym, and then I'll do, the strength work, and then I'm fine the next day, but I'm like, can't skip it midweek, I got to make sure I get in there, So I feel it's a very human problem or condition,
So much of me doesn't want to lose that, because there's a side that's so powerful on the internet when it comes to relatability. There's so much trust building with the audience when you can goof on yourself and show that you're human and prove to people that it's possible to still accomplish these goals without, and you look at someone like Nick Bear, and you're like, well, I gotta be that, I'm not going to say that, getting a squat rack wasn't influenced by watching the stuff he's doing. And it's not a bad thing that I did that, because again, I do want that for the future. Like I want to be doing more of that stuff. But do I ever think I'm going to be as disciplined as Nick? Let's be real. I don't think I am, because the reality is like fitness is so much of Nick's life, and fitness is a percentage of my life. Like I am also very much an artist, and I do not want to lose my ability to be a photographer and be a filmmaker. And so going back into that, like I made a reel recently about the new Cloud Monster 2, and I shot it on film. And like I've never seen that in the running world, like truly seen an embargo release of a shoe shot on film. The closest thing I could think of is my friend Joe Greer, who shoots on film all the time. And all these worlds are like, in the running world at least, is starting to combine. And so I think I need to leave a little spot of my life and my brain open enough to just kind of be like, yeah, I'm a bit of a goof that's not like perfectly dialed in. Now, if I get to a point fitness wise where I'm like starting to break 230 or get down to the 220s, I might be like, let's dial it in a little bit more,
Start trying to get the 1%. Yeah.
Because then I only have a window, of opportunity there.
Floberg in Kenya.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. Yeah, dude. Yeah, and so I would say like, there's 2 camps, right? And like one, I've got, like move in the unforced rhythm of grace, I'm trying to surf the wave, take what comes to me, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's these boats, and someone's got to carry them, who's going to carry the boats. So, like I'm like in between. I'm like, okay, this is one of those times where I got to carry the boats. And then other times it's kind of like, what, when I'm old and dead and my kids go to my grave, I don't want them to be like, yo, that's my dad. He was really fast. Yeah. Sort of. I want him to be like, no, he took me out of school and we went to Dave & Buster's, or like we showed up. So like whatever's kind of in the way or the obstacle, I've got to like make a call. This is family ultimately is more important than here. So we're gonna move into unforced rhythm, and I'm not attached to those 8 miles that may not have been the difference anyway. Where do you kind of fit? Do you carry the boats? It looks like you're kind of moving with that unforced rhythm.
Yeah, unforced rhythm for sure. That's totally more my personality, but it doesn't mean that I don't like to carry the boats. You know, it's like
Oh,
today.
you got the receipts on the boat.
Yeah, and I mean, like, clearly I get fired up. Like, one of my favorite moments ever in my running story, it was like that shot pre Chicago Marathon last fall, where I pulled out the phone and I was just trying to get the pre-race footage, and the energy of the corral just like got to me, and I just started like jumping up and down and screaming my lungs out. And I'm like, it was just sheer passion. It was not the fact that I was pointing a camera at myself. I was literally like a bull in a pen. Like, I'm just so fired up to do this thing. I've been working so hard to like show up and recite this today. So there's that part of me. And then, yeah, there's the other part of me. It's just like, I've been falling in love with chess games with my boys and showing my daughter adoration when she puts on her new dress, and like really letting her know how beautiful she looks. And I have a whole library of photos in my phone that's just an album that's just called Kids Sleeping, and it's just all these vignettes of them falling asleep in the most random places. And I hold that stuff super dear, and I shoot all of my personal life on film, and I'm really intentional with that. There's just all these components in my life that are incredibly special to me. I mean, like, you and I connect on that level so much. So really, coming from a wedding photography background, there's been so many stories that have just wrecked me in seeing the family dynamic and the family component. One in particular, I had a bride that passed away a year after her wedding, and I went to her funeral and everything. And I mean, it's just like, it puts so much into perspective as far as showing up and being present with my own family, documenting our lives in an intentional way, and just realizing the fragility of life and what it could mean to just have everything be gone in a second. And while running is super fun, and while it could be an incredible metaphor and a driving force for you to be a better person, father, husband, if it drives you too far away from the reality of like spending time, just the simplicity of spending time with them, I want nothing to do with it. If it's always in the middle of the day and I'm missing basketball games and I'm not taking them to rollerblade at the playground or whatever they're into right now, I'm not into it. It's this constant dance of weaving it in, because now our boys are like looking at the running and they're like, I want to do it. I'm like, I didn't force you to. I don't want to make you do that. But they're like, no, I love it. I want to. And they have some of that natural ability, and we're starting to run races together. And so then it gets woven in, you know, like all the other stuff in my life, where I see us racing marathons together one day, where I'm on my decline and they're on their incline, and like we duke it out, you know, like I cherish the idea of that happening.
That's cool. Yeah, my middle child, the oldest two went to track. It didn't stick. We did track practice for a while, you know. And then, but he's been telling me lately, like, he wants to get back into it. He's always second on this pacer test where they run their like intervals and stuff. And so, but he's really driven. He's kind of like me as well. And so we'll play chess, and now he's getting like, he wants to get back into running. He sees me running. He's like, and my youngest, he's 4. And I told him, you know, I was like, yeah, Dad, I did a race. And he's like, Sonic is faster than you. I was like, that's fair facts, point. You know? Yeah, he's got that coin. So I will say lastly, you know, when I listen to interviews, they're like, so how can people find you, right? I think it's better. It's like, how can people support you? People follow along the journey. They RTR you, whatever, you know, they follow you in your race. They, you know, holler out. But sometimes it's like, I'll go and when I need a new selfie stick, I go through and find a Kofuzi video, and then I find the link for that, and then I'll like buy that, so he gets 12 cents or whatever, you know? Yeah. Because I'm sure he needs it.
I think, honestly, the biggest thing right now is we're coming out with our feature documentary. It's the most I've ever spent on anything before. So it'd be nice to just, in any way anyone can support that, whether it be the in-person premieres we're having, which they'll be blasted on all my socials, or the inevitable digital release of it when that comes down the line. Yeah, I think functionally that's the biggest support in the business. Other than that, like just showing up in the comments and coming out to shakeout runs and events where I love the in-person stuff. Like I'm an introvert, so I'm exhausted by the end of it, but I love it, like seeing the reality of a running community come together and meeting people that I've seen online so much. It's really special.
So that's how you can support Floberg. If you want to support this channel, there are 3 different ways you can do it. Number 1, you can help me graduate from a nanotuber to a microtuber by subscribing. Just run some strides right along the subscribe button. Number 2, I opened up memberships. So you come along the journey. I make exclusive content for subscribers and do early releases. Number 3, you can watch one of the next videos. I interviewed him, Coach Jason Fitzgerald. Check it out right here.
Touchdown. I take a look, get it back 8. I'm in the gym putting numbers up. You never there, you got bad traits.